The Star Wars The Old Republic universe is set in the year of 3640 BBY, in which we saw the return and rise of the Sith Empire under the rule of Darth Vitiate. But there is more to know from when before Star Wars The Old Republic began. 32,800 years before the Treaty of Coruscant, many philosophers, gurus, shamans and even scientists from all stretches of the galaxy gathered together on the planet Typhon to collectively learn and teach each other. This was further taken into research and practice, and the result was discovering the existence of the Force. These incredible people shared their knowledge of each other and achieved a new level of enlightenment through the Force. This discovery would bring about the birth of a private type community on Typhon, reserved for only those with the potential to tap into and listen to the Force. Over time, this community would grow vastly and new avenues of the Force began to be discovered. 10,660 years later, some of the scholars, monks and researchers of Typhon learned they were able to use the Force as a tool that could elevate them to power. This new idea caused a split within the community and the Force War of Typhon took place. The ensuing conflict would last for 10 years. In 22130 BTC, Typhon was in ruin, scarred by the vandalism of the past war. The survivors of the conflict banded together and moved to a new location on Typhon. These survivors agreed that the conflict must end, and together they gave birth to the Jedi Order. They wrote themselves a code to live by that would help guide them down the path of righteousness and peace. We know this now as the Jedi Code. 730 years later, the wider galaxy becomes even wider as hyperdrive technology becomes mainstream. New worlds and star systems join together to form a democratic alliance so that they may explore and trade together safely and securely. They named this alliance the Republic. Exactly 100 years later, the Jedi Order on Typhon had become so fabled that they were asked to join the Republic Alliance. The Jedi Order accepted and swore loyalty to the Republic in perpetuity. Not much else is known from this period, but we do know that the Republic and Jedi worked very closely together moving forward. The Jedi Temple on Coruscant was built as a symbol of their presence within the Republic and on Coruscant, which eventually became known to be the most famous Jedi Temple in the galaxy. Over more time, the Jedi spread and began to construct more temples on new worlds, until eventually some worlds became lost in history, with their coordinates also lost in time. It was also possible for great storms and hyperspace lanes to affect travel to worlds from time to time. So much time had passed that many of the Jedi's own history became blurred and uncertain. Even the name Jedi was spelled differently by this time, which was likely done in an act to modernize or make the word easier to pronounce to everyone in the galaxy. 17,953 years later, a dark shadow grew over the Jedi Order as a group of Jedi led by one master discovered a new path to power, a new way to interact with the Force. The dark side was born and embraced by one Jedi named Ajunta Paul. This Jedi disagreed with the Jedi Code and sought to bring about a new order of things. However, this Jedi and the group that followed him were defeated and banished from the Republic. This time would become known as the Second Great Jedi Schism. Another 100 years later, and these exiled Jedi, along with their leader Ajunta Paul, found refuge on the planet Coruscant. The exiled group amazed the natives of this world, who were red-skinned beings named Sith. With their powers in the Force, they were also able to force any one of them to submit. Eventually, Ajunta Paul became the first known Dark Lord, and the Order of the Sith began. 1,900 years later, the Sith Order had risen in so much power that it felt ready to challenge the Jedi and Republic as a whole for dominance over the galaxy. This happened when Marka Ragnos died and Naga Sadow succeeded him as a ruler of the Sith Empire. However, Naga Sadow was betrayed by his own apprentice, was eventually defeated, which forced him into exile. The remnants of the Sith were hunted down and destroyed by the Republic at its Chancellor's orders. The Sith were followed back to Coruscant and were defeated once again on their home world. The Jedi ransacked the Coruscant Academy and its surrounding temples in the Valley of the Dark Lords. All knowledge, datacrons and teachings were confiscated and stored on Coruscant or completely destroyed. This action alone weakened the Sith Empire more than losing any war could. Valuable powers and traits were lost because of this. 96 years later, the hidden Sith Empire that was ruled by Darth Vitiate began to build its power in secrecy on Dromund Kaas. Over time, they had built a completely new capital city and even rose a huge Sith armada. It was Grand Moff Vykin that spearheaded the army creation, and he even created the Imperial training regime, which still exists even now. The Sith Empire was successful in remaining hidden for the next 1000 years. In 347 BTC, this was the Exar Kun War. This fallen Jedi was able to discover the spirit of Freedon Nard, who led him further down the dark side path. Exar Kun was able to rediscover Yavin 4 and established his own rule over the Sith as a Dark Lord. Eventually, another Dark Jedi named Ulic Queldroma challenged Exar Kun but was defeated, and then became Exar Kun's apprentice. As tradition dictates though, the apprentice betrayed the master and Exar Kun was pushed back to Yavin 4. In response, Exar Kun performed a ritual that disposed of his physical form and allowed him to walk the realm as a Force spirit instead. However, the Jedi met Exar Kun on Yavin 4 and were able to imprison him in his temple, where he still walks today. 36 years later is an era that should be familiar. This is the Mandalorian Wars and the Jedi, Revan, Malak and Mitra Surik's story and background. 8 years later is once again another familiar era, as this is the Jedi Civil War that broke out after Revan and Malak were knighted Dark Lords. To learn this story in its full extent, check out my Revan and the Sith Emperor video. Another 200 years later, the Republic continued to believe it was safe and free of the Sith Empire for now over 1000 years. However, the Sith Emperor had spies and agents across the galaxy while he hid in secrecy with his empire. Many Jedi over the years were actually under his control or somehow working for him. One such case saw a Jedi Master infiltrate the Jedi Order on behalf of the Sith Emperor, for the sake of researching Naga Sadow. The Emperor wanted to make sure only the Republic was his enemy when he returned, and took steps to make sure no ancient Sith were lurking in the shadows could be a potential problem to him. However, his efforts with Naga Sadow were unsuccessful. 28 years before the Treaty of Coruscant, the Sith Empire returned in all its might. The Sith struck hard and fast within the Outer Rim, causing the galaxy to panic and the Republic Armada to retreat. Over the next 28 years, which led to the Treaty of Coruscant, the Sith were able to seize control of their homeworld and build alliances with new systems. The Sith had even brought about the return of the Mandalorians through funding and secrecy in Imperial intelligence. They became strong allies and together were able to blockade the Republic and Jedi, which closed off a major trade route. It was the smuggler Hylo Viz that managed to break the blockade and balance the scales of war. The Empire and Republic fought each other relentlessly and millions of lives were lost, all of which fueled the Emperor's true power. Eventually, the Emperor gave the order to make peace with the Republic, and the events of Star Wars The Old Republic soon after begins. If you'd like to see more videos like this one, remember to subscribe. Thank you for watching everyone, I'll catch you in the next one. May the Force be with you.